Australians have purchased Subaru Foresters and Nissan X-Trails in their hundreds of thousands over the past 2.5 decades or so. And Australians are now buying hybrids in their tens of thousands every year. So, to complete a perfect comparison setup of two popular Japanese SUVs that offer more off-roading ability than your average all-wheel drive, we've brought petrol-electric versions to the snow. This is beautiful Lake Jindabyne, and we're heading in that direction to the mountains. Chasing cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
The Forester and X-Trail are closely matched in more ways than sales. Both vehicles are about 4.7 metres long. Both hybrids are available as 5-seater only. You can get a 7-seater X-Trail, but that's in lower spec petrol grades only. Entry prices for these hybrids are from about $50,000 drive away for the X-Trail or from about $52,000 for the base hybrid Forester. The X-Trail has benefited from a bit of a price cut throughout the range. So this is our long-termer Forester actually, the base E-Boxer. You will notice it's got bike racks on top. They're accessory items that we had fitted to our long-termer, but they're not standard, just so you know that. Now, it is a bit of a jump to the next grade of the Forester Hybrid, $9,000, and that's because it's missing a premium spec that's available on the petrol-only Forester. This is actually a flagship e-Power X-Trail, the TIL. 58,000 drive away approximately, but it is easy for us to pretend that this is the TI we actually wanted but wasn't available. That's 55,000 drive away. And what helps make these cars match up a little bit better is that this X-Trail is wearing optional 19-inch wheels that are standard on the TI, where 20s are standard on the TIL. If the exterior design is unmistakably Forester, the same goes for the interior. Now, it is a lot less fussy than before, which is a good thing, much tidier looking, and a lot of information now crammed into this central area, and that incorporates a new portrait-style touchscreen, just like in the Outback. And if you've got the wireless CarPlay going, well, then the screen looks like a giant iPhone. The menu presentation itself, not fantastic. Some of the resolution is not particularly sharp, and also the X mode off-road modes are now buried in this touchscreen rather than a physical dial that was on the center console before. Digital driver display, well, it's only a small middle section in this base hybrid. You have to go to the higher spec hybrids if you want to have the fully digital display. You also need to go to those higher grades if you want to have a sunroof, which would be welcome because it is a little bit dark inside this cabin. The seats, there's no electric adjustment for either the driver or the passenger either, it's manual only. Into the rear seat of the Forester, and look at this, acres of space, excellent headroom, knee space plentiful, foot space is also great, very good under thigh support as well. I feel like I could spend several hours in the back seat of this Forester. Then for the practical touches, we've got a centre armrest with a couple of cup holders. Door pockets well sized for bottles. We've got rear vents, a couple of USB ports, A and C, and then these rather neat dual pouches in the back of the seat backs. No automatic tailgate on this base hybrid. That only comes with the sport and touring versions of the hybrid Forester. But what a great boot this is. 484 litres quoted, but it's really wide, a good length, low loading lip. And you also get electric release levers for the 60/40 split fold rear seats. You get a cargo blind, but in a shock for the Forester, there is no spare wheel. And the reason is that under here, there's all your electronic gubbins. So if you get a puncture, your choice is either sticking with this and your little repair goo, or it's spending a few grand on getting a tow bar accessory to mount your spare wheel on the tailgate. That's a little bit weird. All right, let's see how this fits all our ski gear. The 4th generation X-Trail in late 2022 was a real turnaround for Nissan interior design, and you don't need a top spec TIL model to appreciate a well designed and nicely constructed cabin. Every grade except the base ST gets this horizontal 12.3-inch touchscreen, and I really like the fact that you get lots of physical controls for the climate and seat heating, etc. So it's about £3,000 more if you want a TI X-Trail e-Power over the base hybrid Forester, but you do get several equipment advantages. So for example, you get a head-up display, you get a digital rear view mirror, you get a panoramic sunroof that opens, and you also get leather accented seats instead of cloth, and you also get electric front seat adjustment. Something else, the wireless smartphone charging tray is much better than in the Forester. It's angled downwards and it's got an anti-slip mat. And then the door pockets just give you that bit more space for holding larger drink bottles. Another feature advantage in the rear seat here is that you get climate control for the rear cabin. There are a couple of features on this TIL model that we have to ignore because they're not on the TI, and that is rear sunshades and also heated outboard rear seats. The rear seat backs also come with recline adjustment, sliding 60-40 split, so you can adjust the amount of legroom you want, or if you want more boot space. Again, some decent knee space, good headroom, not quite as generous as it is in the Forester, and generally I'd say comfort is not quite at the Forester's level. The under thigh support is lacking here, the foot space is also a bit tighter. On the practical side, we have a centre armrest, which is essentially the middle split section of the 40-20-40 seat backs, couple of cup holders, smartphone holder, seat back pouches, and again, a couple of USB-C ports that are split between A and C. We have an auto tailgate this time on the TIL and the TI, not the base STL e-Power though. Nissan quotes 575 litres for capacity, more than the Forester, but that is up to the ceiling. And to be honest, the boot space doesn't look to be a lot in it, to be honest. Not many features, not really anywhere for hanging, storing things at the sides of the boot. You do get the divide and hide Nissan boot floor system, so you can flick this bit up and you can divide your grocery bags or whatever there. There's a little bit of underfloor storage here, but again, it's kind of limited a bit by the electronic gubbins underneath for the hybrid system. You do get a 40-20-40 configuration for the seat backs, and that is a better configuration in terms of fitting two adults in the rear outboard seats, while still having a central section down for fitting things such as skis. But again, as with the Forester, a hybrid with no spare wheel, it's a repair kit as well. The Forester driving experience wouldn't be the Forester driving experience, of course, without its signature all-round vision. So we've got tall glass for the windscreen, for the side glass, and a very expansive rear view vision as well. And it's not just great for the driver, it's also great for passengers because it gives them an even better view out, particularly of this wonderful scenery around the snowy mountains. The previous generation Forester, I felt dropped the ball a bit for the car because it lost some of its ride comfort and some other aspects. But here, this generation feels like an absolute return to form. The ride comfort is absolutely outstanding on this SUV. I think we're talking S-Class levels of comfort. Complementing that ride comfort are these wonderful front seats. Really, really comfortable, good support. They're like lounge chairs, great for long distance driving. You're driving from Sydney all the way to the snow, so relaxing. Little bit of wind noise around the windscreen, but not too bad. Tyre noise also okay on these Falcon regular road tyres. Only on the very coarsest of surfaces was road noise or tyre noise quite deafening. But, you know, that's only occasional and certainly not a deal breaker. Now we go on to some unsealed section now as we head along Guthaga Road. That's okay because we've got symmetrical all-wheel drive. So the first e-Boxer petrol electric Forester was pretty flawed in terms of drivetrain refinement, and also the fact that it really wasn't that much more fuel efficient than the regular petrol Forester. But now we've got this strong hybrid, there's Toyota components in there, but it is still a flat 4, pleased to say, and it's a bigger and more powerful engine than the previous engine that was used in the e-Boxer system. We've got combined power of 145 kilowatts, and then we've got good torque figures for the engine and electric motor, 212 newton meters for the petrol engine, 276 newton meters from the electric motor. And something that we've discovered, that the acceleration, particularly in-gear acceleration, is much better in the hybrid Forester now. So this is a classic series parallel system like the RAV4s. You can have a little bit of electric driving, but you can't go too fast before the petrol engine kicks in. And look, you'll know that both vocally and by looking at the little energy flow diagram that we've got here on the driver display. So yeah, that's the only thing you do here. That petrol engine does get quite noisy when you're pushing for some harder acceleration, but it's kind of, at least it's a growl. It's not a totally unpleasant sound. So we'll start pushing it now. We have really nice throttle response from this Forester. We're not in any sport driving mode or anything like this. This is just default. And yeah, even on this unsealed section here, getting plenty of confidence from the Forester's grip and its handling. Yeah, the steering is really nice and fluid, nicely weighted. Time to swap into the X-Trail. This X-Trail isn't a return to form because, well, the X-Trail hasn't really had previous form. The first and second gens, the boxy four-wheel drive style models, they were quite good for going off-road, and then the third gen introduced better refinement in addition to that SUV style body shape. But this fourth generation is without doubt the best X-Trail yet. It's actually quite a sporty drive. The X-Trail's dynamics are perhaps not quite in the same league as the Mazda CX-5 or Volkswagen Tiguan, but it's really nice. The steering's got a little bit more of a heft to the Foresters, and there's an immediacy to it when you're turning into corners. Steering wheel as well, it's a smoother leather than the grainy type we get on the Forester. The ride comfort, look, this X-Trail doesn't roll along as fluently as the Forester. The ride is a bit firmer and it can feel a little bit sort of lumpier, a bit more patchery at times, but it's still pretty good. It's still very comfortable. Get a heated steering wheel as well, but again, that's only on this top spec TIL, so we can't really count that here. Also get heated front seats as with the Forester, and we've just got it in level 1 at the moment. It's not that cold today, but there is a storm coming. The X-Trail e-Power drives in a very different way to the Forester hybrid, because where the Subaru is more of your conventional series parallel with the petrol engine and electric motor often working in unison, this X-Trail is essentially more of an EV with the petrol engine acting as a generator. The petrol engine is never powering the wheels of this SUV. It's always the electric motors, front and rear. And there we go. Now we can see on our energy flow monitor here, the engine is feeding the battery, topping that up, and then the petrol engine is then driving the electric motors via an inverter. And that makes for a much quieter experience than in the Forester, because where in the Forester you're regularly getting that throbby flat 4 kicking in, and particularly with harder acceleration. Now we're going to push this car now. You can hear the petrol engine like in the background, kind of sort of humming away, but you know, it's really just there in the background. It's not that noticeable. We even have a dedicated EV mode, so the battery's quite topped up, about 3/4 full, so it should allow us to engage it. And there we go, it's engaged, and a little blue icon on the left of the display showing there. Nissan says in the EV mode, the X-Trail will travel up to 100 kilometers an hour in silence and keeping the petrol engine out of the equation. And to really give you that sense of a more EV-like driving experience, there's even e-pedal mode, which we press down here on the center console, and that brings in, well, supposedly one pedal driving, but it's not quite the full experience as in most EVs. That, but it does give you very sharp deceleration on this road of notice. So yeah, we'll just lift off there, don't need to touch the brake pedal. Lift off again, yeah, strong retardation. All right, let's see if it will come to a complete stop. No, so it won't come to a complete stop. It's still rolling forward a little bit. So it's not true one pedal driving, because to get to a standstill, you've got to press the actual brake pedal. And here we come onto the unsealed section that we were on earlier with the Subaru. But carrying on with the fuel efficiency, because it's such an important part of this comparison. So the drive from Sydney down to the snow. Subaru averaged 7.9 litres per 100 kilometres. The X-Trail was 7 litres per 100 kilometres. So there it's proved so far to have the advantage on economy. But we're not going to leave it there. We're going to continue driving around the Snowy Mountains region. But here again, this X-Trail feels really nice and secure on this more slippery surface. And it's riding over the corrugations and mini potholes really nicely too. More than ample comfort. Yeah, there's definitely some decent torque underfoot with this X-Trail. Absolutely charging up this mountain road.
Although the X-Trail isn't the full EV experience, the upside is that you also don't need to ever plug it into a socket for recharging. At this point in our adventures, there's plenty of snow on the slopes, but nothing on the road, so we instead head for some dirt and mud terrain around Jindabyne to challenge the respective all-wheel drive systems.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, we are going to pop the multi-terrain mode. So auto is default, snow mode, unfortunately we don't need that right now. Off-road, okay, here we go. Oh, that's already quite good traction on this slippery dirt track. So the X-Trail e-Power has a ground clearance of 187 millimeters, so it's actually lower than the petrol X-Trail, which is 205 millimeters. But we're not really worried about ground clearance on this because we don't need ground clearance. This is very flat track, just slippery and a bit muddy. Oh, there we go, a little bit of slippage. So the X-Trail's e-Force all-wheel drive system, it's a pretty clever all-wheel drive system, electronic, so the system is always monitoring the wheels for traction and can individually brake the wheels just to optimize traction. We're coming out here, yeah, look at that, that's good traction out here. Remember, we're just on regular all-season tyres, not off-road tyres. The Nissan claims the rear electric motor delivers response 10,000 times faster than the mechanical four-wheel drive system. There we go, stability control again, just as the back end was starting to slip out a little bit. Look, we're pushing this like a little bit because this is testing, you know, and it's, you want to find out if somebody does apply a little bit too much acceleration, comes into a corner a bit too quick on a slippery track like this, is the car going to keep you secure? And X-Trail so far is doing a great job. A tight corner here, accelerate, more acceleration than we should do. We're not on snow, this is still fun. All right, here we go, tight corner. carrying too much speed. Look at there, look. Yeah, look, I'm doing some little corrections, but you know, you can feel the system. Oh, look at that. The car going sideways a little bit one way then the other, but the stability control system, it's doing the job. It's doing what it needs to do to keep it in the direction you want to go. Okay, so switching into the Forester, going to go to the central touchscreen, into vehicle settings, then there's X mode, we'll press that, and then we get our choice of snow/dirt, normal is obviously default, and then deep snow mud, so it's a dual mode X mode system. And well, we're definitely not in deep snow, and we're not in snow either. We're not, well, it's a little bit muddy, but I think dirt will be absolutely fine for this. It's a bit of a mix. So the Forester, again, lots of ground clearance for a family SUV, 220 millimeters, so quite a bit more than the X-Trail hybrid and more than the petrol X-Trail as well. So a difference to the X-Trail is that there is still more of a mechanical connection between the front and rear axles. And then of course there's still plenty of electronics involved to help the Forester get traction in trickier conditions on trickier surfaces. And X mode does various things. You know, it plays around with your throttle response, it dulls it a bit. It can force the gearbox to go into a lower gear to help with particularly more challenging terrain. This is not particularly challenging terrain, as we said when we experienced with the X-Trail. Now, let's see what this is like. Oh yes, that's good traction. Yeah, look, it just, look, I'm feeling less intrusion from the stability control system. It's much more subtle, I feel, and it just generally just feels more traction. And again, this Forester, it's just on regular tyres, so it's got no real advantage in terms of the tyre grip. It just seems to be getting better traction consistently. Yeah, there again, like, I'm barely moving the steering wheel, where I'm sure you could have seen when I was driving the X-Trail, there was quite a bit of hand movement. So the sense is that the Forester has got the smarter electronics, and if we just power through here, and this muddy section, yeah, look at that, I'm hardly having to do any correction. Very subtle cut in from the ESC. So yeah, when you're driving on this kind of slippery terrain, the Forester is just that more fluid. It allows you to get back on the power much earlier than the X-Trail, which is, it kind of kills the power quite early if it detects really slippery stuff, and it's quite a while before the X-Trail is allowing you to reapply the throttle. Yeah, this is good. This Forester is good off-road. The X-Trail's good off-road, but Forester does feel better, at least in this scenario. It's starting to dry out a little bit from what it was earlier, because we're starting to get some blue skies, but I can see the mountains over there, full of cloud, and I hope those clouds are full of snow. Come on, the snow.
And the next day, our snow prayers were answered as we ascended to Threadbow's Dead Horse Gap, the highest point of the gloriously winding Alpine Way Road. So far, it's 1-0 to the Forester's combination of mechanical and symmetrical permanent all-wheel drive versus the electric and electronics-focused X-Trail. Will anything change in the white stuff?
Well, we didn't think we were going to get to drive on snow, but here it is. Typical mountain conditions. They change very quickly, and it is absolutely dumping right now. Need the wipers on front and rear. The road has got covered. It's a pretty thick blanket already. So you know what? We are in our snow mode, and off we go. Like, beautiful conditions, but you do need to drive carefully. So definitely don't be too aggressive on the throttle pedal, don't be too aggressive on the brake pedal. Nice and measured inputs, but you know, we're just traveling along 60 in the 60 zone. The X-Trail feeling more than secure. Again, just gradual application of throttle just to help it get up. Apply a little bit more, good traction. So the system is also in this snow mode, it is dulling the throttle response, which is what you want, because you just don't want any sharp inputs. Same with the steering, just gentle, gradual inputs, nothing to upset the car. Yeah, you can feel the wheels, the tyres scrabbling around a little bit. Sorry if you can hear the wipers. It's because it's snowing. It's quite dry on the windscreen, but you kind of need them on. A little bit of wheel spin there, but the system quickly braked that individual wheel. That was spinning there, curve, that's it, nice and gentle. Look, you can drive to the snow in a front-wheel drive car and a rear-wheel drive car. And if you're particularly steady in the way that you drive, it'll be absolutely fine. Done it many times in Europe, done it many times in Australia, though it's more likely in Europe that you'll be driving in conditions like this. I can't remember the last time I drove in the snowy mountains and had snow on the road like this. It's fantastic. Like, it is a beautiful winter wonderland. Okay, Foresters turn onto the snowy road, so go to our system and we want deep snow. No, it's not that deep yet. Snow dirt, I think that will be sufficient. Okay, X mode, snow dirt, here we go. So same thing again, being very careful with the inputs on accelerator pedal, brake pedal and the steering wheel. Just also feeling from the seat of the pants, just feeling the traction that we've got underneath, getting ready to make any corrections that we need to. But again, you know, we know that from that dirt driving that Forester's got a very good stability control system to help keep you nice and safe. Just push it a little bit more for this uphill, getting along there very nicely. Push it a bit more. The engine getting vocal again, you know, I wasn't asking a lot of acceleration. I'm still being judicious with my throttle inputs, but yeah, the engine is something that you do hear quite a lot with the Subaru, and particularly on the steeper hills. Very noisy, but not a deal breaker. Okay, just a gentle dab on the brake pedal for this corner, lift off and just let it glide through. Gentle steering. Oh, look, there we go. Little bit of stability control kicking in there. The back end stepped out just a little bit. So it just goes to show you really got to be fully alert in these conditions. Ooh, there we go. I think it's getting even slipperier. There we go. Look at that. We're sliding. Yeah, but we're just into a little bit of off-road. No dramas, but it just goes to show there, just applying just a little bit of extra brake pressure, a little bit of a slide. But all good. All right. Woo! Traction control light is flashing away like mad there as we're just getting underway. Definitely slippery out here. There is not as much grip out here as there was on that dirt track earlier, even though it was a bit muddy and wet. But again, just like on the dirt, you know, we're just focusing on driving safely here, but it does feel like the Forester, just that little bit more playful. Look at that, that's just a little slide there, no stability control kicking in, just a little correction on the steering wheel. If it was going to step out any further, there's no doubt that this stability control system would have just stepped in just to nip that slide in the bud. Even at low speeds, this is quite good fun, though I'm never going to say that driving on snow is as much fun as skiing or snowboarding.
This has been a mini epic trip in our bid to discover whether Subaru or Nissan built a better mid-sized all-wheel drive hybrid SUV. Our real-world fuel economy test over hundreds of kilometres, however, suggests there's remarkably little between them. Both reversing and contradicting the respective trip computers, we crunched Bowser numbers to return 7.58 litres per 100 kilometres for the X-Trail, with the Forester marginally more efficient with 7.55 litres per 100 kilometres.
So, X-Trail or Forester? Well, it's pretty close, to be honest. The X-Trail, it looks a little dated, particularly at the front, but there is a facelift coming. It's well equipped, and its hybrid system, it's so intriguing, and it delivers a sweet spot of efficiency and performance. The Forester, it is a little bit X-y. We think it's missing a grade between this base model and the Sport, but there are some good features in there, and if you are looking for a mid-size family SUV that delivers decent fuel efficiency, supreme comfort on long-distance driving, and delivers all-round capability in all-season weather like this, our pick is the Forester.